All right. It's the full hour where I'm at, so I think we can start. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the GitLab Retrospective for the 10.7 release. I am going to start with the first item, which is previous retrospective improvement task. A couple of us had a task of implementing the security release procedure and define it, make it repeatable, and document it in a handbook. We missed one of those. I just realized now we didn't document it in the handbook, but we did document it in the proper location for it, documentation for the release tasks. We kept it very short, like the first iteration is there that allows us to actually use it right now, this very moment, because we have a security release in the process. And while doing this, we are going to improve it further. Mac, I think you can talk about the next one.
Sure, thanks, Mayor. So I'm standing in for Sean. So we took up an action item on this past release to look deeper into our metric to see how we're doing per finding regression-wise in our release process. So this is our first iteration, thanks to Sean. As you can see, I think we are, with all the release process improvements, we are finding regressions faster. As seen from the graph, the time to find is decreasing. But the data is too messy. We still don't know whether it's found on staging, it's found on production, it's found on dev, or it's found anywhere else. So we're still working on improvements on how to better hone in and polish this metric so it's more accurate, and also shine more light into the release process. So there are other recommendations for the future, including adding more labels, and so we can do data sanitization on this chart. And we'll be iterating on this. I think that's back to you, Maren, for what went well this month.
Thanks, Mac. So I want to kick off by saying that release trainees were actually doing the amount of work that the release managers were doing as well. So Philippe and Myra were extremely helpful this release. So I want to just give a shout out to them because I think they did an amazing job there. Another thing that is worth noting is that we were disciplined about our scopes. So we purposely targeted that we are not going to work weekends no matter what. So that allowed us to actually cut scope and move with the release without causing anyone more pain. Dawa, you're up next.
Yeah, thanks, Maren. There's some more detail in the document, and I'm going to keep this short because I know I have a lot to retrospect on today. But one thing that went very well over the last 4 months is that we had a lot of like a substantial set of functionality that we promised to a customer. And by splitting it up, spreading it over those 4 months, we actually managed to get all of it in before the 10.7 freeze, with one small exception. But even that one did not end up causing any issues in production or any of the other environments because of some very careful handling of that by Bob. And I'd specifically like to thank Bob, Francisco, Tiago, and James Lopez for all the work they did on this stuff over the last 4 months. Of course, these are features that will be useful for everyone, but we built them specifically for a customer with kind of the deliverable date being the 10.7 release. And we did that, and I think it went very, very well. Maren, you're next.
Yep, standing in for Sean. Discussion shipped 100% deliverables, which is amazing. Congrats, discussion. According to Sean, it's because of the better planning, not because of actually doing more. Camille, you're up next.
So also a quick note, we had a lot of problems with release, but we managed to quickly revert, fix bugs to prevent blocking of the first release even further. Actually, it was probably the first time when I actually clicked a revert button on a merge request to be even more aggressive and not delay things even further. So what went wrong this month, Stan?
Yeah, I think there was just a communication issue because we saw a lot of bugs before the 7th, and we fixed them, assuming that the freeze would be happening. RC got deployed with a lot of these bugs, so I think there's some comments there about the timing, but it seems like we could have done a better job of communicating. This should have been merged in sooner into this release candidate. Maren.
Yep. So I'm again standing in for Sean. We had one of the major outages caused by the issue linked there. Well, obviously you can read all about it there, but it does build on top of what I also wrote below, that this was like one of the more challenging releases because of the issues we found during deploy. We had really big bugs that were caused by the issue that Sean mentioned there. And that meant that we only caught that on GitLab.com. We didn't catch it on dev, on staging, Canary, or rather we did catch it a bit on Canary, but too late apparently. And we moved to production with it, which further caused the problems. I think like a couple of other things that are worth mentioning here is that we had a real big problems with the nodes because of some kernel bugs. You have the link there. We had record-breaking deploys. Sadly, when it comes to hours taken to deploy, 8 and 6 hours, and we only did 3 deploys, which is definitely far below what we did before. And I think that also caused quite a lot of backlog with the bugs, right? Like we detected something, and instead of moving fast with it and deploying as soon as we could, we had a backlog of bugs to address. I think Sean also wrote that, yeah, less frequent deploys caused us to patch more, which again build on top of the problems there. We kind of did patch on top of a patch at one point, which wasn't the greatest. Yeah, feel free to step in with questions. I'm just going to go through this. A lot of this discussion happened async, as you can see in the retro doc. But if not, I am going to see if Andrew is here and pass it to him.
He's fighting a fire right now, so.
Yeah, I suspected as much. Yeah, you can read the discussion there. So I'm gonna pass it to Nick, who is on the call.
Sorry, I'm a bit lost. Is it not Andrew next?
Andrew is not on the call.
Oh, sorry. Right. Yes. So with the 10.7 deploy, we changed something in Pages. The reason for the change was to get the artifact proxy server for online view of HTML artifacts working out of the box. This is kind of a pre-existing bug that had arrived in 10.5, I believe. However, there are a number of regressions in environments that were not GitLab.com. So our self-hosted on-premises customers and customers deploying to various cloud-native /Docker configurations, including our legacy Helm charts, were affected, but GitLab.com wasn't. And we actually merged the change on the 21st of March, but only shipped the code to these environments that are broken on the 22nd of April. There's a bunch of details there and a bit of self-pity. The main point I want to make is that the GitLab Pages project itself is out on a limb, and myself, and to a small extent Camille, are the only maintainers. And we have a lot of changes queued up to make to this project in the coming months. And every time you make a major change to it, something seems to break, and the route to getting that fixed is often not clear. So I just wanted to bring it up, and there's stuff in how we can improve further down where we can probably discuss it more, unless someone has anything they want to say right now. Otherwise, on to Marion and how we can improve.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. Again, standing in for Sean here. Yeah, exception requests are made there for a reason, but it's kind of hard saying no. I don't know if you guys are all aware, but it is almost impossible saying no to colleagues, especially when you like them. Yeah, we should definitely go with being stricter on the exception requests. If you take a look at there is like a lot of discussion, but Tommy made a list of exception requests we had. Some of them were justified to include, but others we could have definitely done better and said, I'm sorry, no, this is not gonna happen. One thing I do have to know that is probably not written there is that one exception request where I think the DAO mentioned it, that actually went really well. So what we did, the exception request was very important for a customer. We made a plan on how to minimize the impact by creating patches in front, or rather ahead of time, testing thoroughly as much as possible, obviously, on all of our environments before we actually go to GitLab.com. And finally, when we reach GitLab.com, nothing has happened. We had patches ready in case something was to happen, and ultimately we shipped this feature. So I think, like, going further, we might want to have a bit of more discussion there, like spend more time in discussing things and preparing than just saying yes and then moving on and fighting the battles that you probably saw. Same thing, and I think I missed, I'm sorry about that. There was an issue that I raised about patches in production. At some point, we did patch on top of a patch, which caused a lot of problems when we wanted to actually revert back. So we have an issue where we are discussing this fact, where we are going to have a process of, as soon as you have one patch and you're trying to resolve a problem with another one, it's a time to stop and think more, even if everything is burning around you, just to prevent problems like we had. I think I'm going to pass this to Eric because no one is picking up.
Thanks, Maren. So my point was about Goldie Loader in particular. So I think, nothing against the authors of that module. We just have to exercise more caution. If we're using something open source off the shelf, so to speak, we've got to have confidence that it works at our scale, or ideally 10x our scale. That's the heuristic we have to employ. And it means the pool of companies we can borrow from in terms of open source or open source projects is much smaller than anybody working on a regular project. And if we are going to try something, we need to exercise more caution. We need to have a test plan. We need to test things like this in Canary with realistic traffic. We need to improve our tools to make that possible. But I expect that what that's going to yield is many times we end up going deeper in the stack and doing lower level optimizations. And if there's some open source component, we're probably producing it rather than consuming it. And we love open source, we are open source, but again, we want to have confidence that the things we're using will work at our scale and significantly larger. And it means we're going to be saying, I think, no to a lot more things. So please think in those terms when you're proposing something. And those of you that are the other end of approving a merge request or approving an exception request, exercise some conservatism, not in terms of moving slower, but in terms of a healthy sense of skepticism. Nick, Pages?
Yes, so I think, this has come up with Workhorse in the past as well, which is a similar project with similar constraints and a similar sort of position within GitLab. We need more maintainers in Pages. We need more oversight of what's happening in there. At the moment, I'm essentially writing stuff and then merging it myself, which is not great. So I think that's something that we just need to look at in the coming days. Technically, Pages is underneath CI/CD. I think it's been underloved in the past, and we can probably do more about that.
So this is true. Actually, we pulled Nick very deeply into Pages, and we need basically more people on this project, especially that it seems that people are asking for some significant features built on top of Pages. For example, subgroup support for Pages. Second thing is let's encrypt support for Pages. The third thing that I am aware of is the private Pages, basically, which can be like EE premium feature. And the current, basically, Nick, Jakub, and Alessia, because these are basically three people that recently work on Pages, seems just not enough given the work that is done there. The second thing, it's also like we don't have like PM focus on Pages also, which also makes things a little harder.
Thanks. Yeah, I agree with all that. And then the other question I've got is, how can we get regressions like this detected more quickly? As I mentioned in what went wrong, we committed this code into GitLab Pages Master 21st of March, and we only deployed it to customers 22nd of April. GitLab.com isn't, and our developer machines aren't the only environments GitLab runs on. So, and the more people we can get this code to earlier, the more equipped we are to handle problems when they do crop up in any case. So I'm just wondering if there's something like an early release process, or we can encourage people to even just to run our release candidates in some sort of early adopter program. And that would help all of GitLab, I think, to pick up these things more quickly.
So release candidates are built and released to the public as soon as we have them. We have nightly packages that are also available to public. So whoever wants to run this, they can run that.
They can, but do they? And can we encourage them to do more?
That's a question for sure to answer. Yep.
And if that's everything on that, I think it's Stan next.
Yeah, I don't know that many customers using Pages, but it might be good to figure out if there's anybody who's using it at a significant level. My point is about just speeding up the deployment process. I noticed, in the past deployments have been really long, and partly due this past one was probably due to kernel issues, but just in general, we could get deploys done where people can just walk away and it all just works. That would be the ideal case, right? Until we have Kubernetes or something like that. Feels like, I guess, James, thanks for chiming in here. I thought that it took, we deployed it in different sets. So each set could take 30 minutes or even more, and then you would just be blocked. But it sounds like that problem has been solved.
Yeah, that's right. For now on, I'm hoping to merge the merge request soon, and it should be in parallel, except for GitLab. But what I'm going to try to do there is do not deploy it if it's the same version or something like that. So that may even avoid deploying that not in parallel. But the rest of the nodes are all in parallel, like Sidekick, Git, API, everything.
Great. So the rest of the idea is just like, well, what could we do to make things a little less painful in the short term before we have a cloud native chart and all that? And some good discussion there. So we won't completely read through them, but feel free to look at that.
I can also add like one thing that we are going to try and do like short term. We'll have James and Robert actually improving the tools that we use. We wrote the tools as we went along, but we never stopped to improve them. And we are going to do our best this release, so 10.8, to spend some time on things like James mentioned, like parallelizing the deployment, moving our release to CI, so we reduce time spent on onboarding and various issues there. I have an issue to link as soon as I finish my talk for you to take a look at the high impact things.
So Stan, without going into exhaustive detail, do you have a favorite or do you have a proposal? Because we do want to identify some action items out of this retrospective that we're concretely going to do. Is that premature? Or should we just flag a small pool of people to make that decision, or is there one that we could say, yes, we definitely want to do this?
Well, I think Mara and I like the number 2 option, but I think Jar brought up the 4th option there. I'm not sure if we need to talk more about that. I think it's a similar idea where you just bring up something that's already ready rather than try to, a lot of the pain points is just waiting for stuff to happen, but we could pre-allocate machines or something that has things ready. So you just flip a switch and most things are done.
Eric, would this fall into tooling improvements as well? Like this is high impact for sure, so we might want to consider that, including that.
Maybe it sounds like there's a couple good ideas. So why don't we have Robert or someone partner with Jarv on the production team and choose from these options? I don't want to rush the decision now, but I think we definitely want a commitment to speeding up the releases for sure.
Yeah, I more meant like research into what we can do about this rather than dedicate to one option here. Cool.
Cool. And the next point is just in general improving our monitoring to hopefully catch some of these problems before they actually become problems. So, we have issues with PG Bouncer hitting their limits. I don't think we quite have an exporter for that yet. Things like SQL query increases in production. So a lot of times, a lot of stuff we do is manual. We check, hey, there's a lot more SQL queries. We really should be alerted on things that we use often, like the CI jobs registration. If we see that ballooning, there's a red flag and we should do something right away, and that's a problem. The job's not picking, merges not happening, all these things we should be alerted on. And we see symptoms of a lot of issues, but we don't see the direct problem right away. So there's issues that they're discussing how we can improve those. Mac.
Thanks, Dan. So I'll take you up the next one. So this came up as an improvement in our current, our latest release. So due to the discussions whether there are unreleased QA tasks in RC tasks, So the team jumped on it, and then we are now starting to move the unfinished, unverified QA task rolling forward to the next RC tasks to make sure we close it out. So this has been an instinct, a tribal knowledge, but we need to work on codifying this into the release process and make sure that we follow the steps for every release going forward. Yeah, just want to say thank you for the team for helping me out with this. Thank you. And then that's it from me.
So we've got some, does anyone have the YouTube open? Any questions that we want to answer over there?
I think there's one from Rav asking if we are doing anything to address overall performance.
Definitely, yeah. So it's a long play, but we are migrating from Azure to GCP. That looks like we'll be able to turn that on next month. And then once we're there, we're going to be increasing our level of automation. We're going to be eventually adopting our own Helm charts. So things will be Dockerized. We'll be running things in Kubernetes. All of that will be automated. And we're going to keep making progress there. Was the question about performance or availability?
It was performance.
Performance. So we do have some new monitoring up related to performance. Maybe we could get the link and send it to him. It's mostly front-end performance. So we're running site speed and we have much better metrics. The performance issue today is much different. That's related to a mistake that was made with our database. And so we're down to one database. We're replicating data over to the replicas and then, or the secondaries, and then those will be up by 1 p.m. So the site's slowed today, but it's a very different issue than the performance issues we usually address. So that's ongoing. We're not going to retrospect on that now until that's over, but we definitely will, because it's a serious issue going on right now. Hopefully that answers the question. In terms of action items coming out of this, I think just kind of working from the bottom of the doc back up, Mac, you mentioned getting this worked into the release process. I think that's definitely something that we want to do. So let me give you an action item there. I think we said Robert, as release coordinator, is going to work on something related to speeding up the releases. So I think that's a good one. We don't want to prematurely make the decision. Just creating an action item for Maren. I can't CC Robert in the doc for some reason. So I just gave it to you, Maren. I think we can definitely have better maintainership of pages. So let's identify someone to help there. We'll say that's Camille. The monitoring piece, Stan, I know you're already working on this. In fact, I think it's your quarterly OKR. So I would say just keep doing that, and let's do an update in the next retrospective about the progress that you've made with Ben. And patches and exception requests is the other big one. So I suggest what we do here is I've been in the loop on these in the past. That hasn't been happening, but I suggest we just insert me back in the loop. So future exception requests will have to pass through me. I'm going to ask a ton of questions, and we'll just make sure that together we're exercising the appropriate amount of skepticism and managing risk more effectively. So we'll update the template to get me in there as the final step. And obviously everybody just use the heuristics we talked about today to make sure that when we're making an exception to our feature freeze, that it's truly needed. And I think those are all the action items. So I'll frame those in the doc for next time, and I'll ping everybody in about 2 weeks to make sure that they're making progress on these. And again, I put a link here at the bottom. There is a site slowness issue going on as we speak. I've linked to the doc here so you can read in exhaustive detail what's going on, but we won't retrospect until after it's actually handled. We'll let the team focus on resolving that right now. So any other questions in chat or YouTube chat? Looks like we already got the performance one. Okay, all right, thanks everybody.